When I was 22, I used to take my camera to the ocean pier almost every week. Just basic street photography, candid shots, boats in the fog, nothing special, but I liked the atmosphere. That evening had gone long. My friend Sheila came with me, and we stayed till sunset, taking pictures of seagulls diving and couples walking past the railings. By the time we packed up, we were both starving. On the way back, we pulled off at this 24-hour diner on the side of the highway. Not a chain, just one of those places with a flickering neon sign and a gravel lot where black SUVs sometimes idled with tinted windows. I'd seen it in passing before, and figured it was one of those late-night spots where drivers for celebrities waited while their bosses had meetings nearby. Inside, it smelled like fried dough and old coffee. The lighting was low, all yellow bulbs and reflections off fake chrome. Booths lined the windows, half of them empty. But a few had tired-looking truckers and one guy in a long wool coat flipping through his phone like he'd been there all night. Right outside, by the entrance, I saw a man leaning against a black SUV. He didn't smoke or talk, just stood there. His suit fit perfectly, clean lines, dark gray, or maybe black. It was hard to tell in the dim light. His skin looked too smooth, too still. Not plastic, just off. Like he didn't blink enough. I looked once and then again, but he didn't move at all. It was like he was carved into the vehicle. Sheila went straight for the counter to order, digging through her bag for her wallet and joking with the cashier like nothing felt weird. I told her I'd be right back and headed down a hallway past the kitchen and a big old pinball machine toward the restroom. The hallway felt longer than it should have. The floor was laminate, a little sticky under my shoes. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and an AC vent in the ceiling pushed out cold air that didn't smell like anything. Not food, not soap, just clean, like a hospital. I passed a supply closet and a faded poster for milkshakes from the 90s. The bathroom was around the corner, just one door for women, one for men. I pushed inside and locked the stall farthest from the door. I remember noticing the smell of floor cleaner, sharp and lemony, like they just wiped everything down. Still, something felt wrong, and I wasn't sure why. Maybe just road fatigue or too many hours staring through a camera lens. The moment the door shut behind me, the hallway sounds dropped off. But then, I heard footsteps. Not loud, just the soft scuff of soles on the laminate floor. They paused outside the restroom for a second, and I figured it was just someone else heading in. Normal enough. But then I caught a whiff of cologne. Sharp. Expensive. Not drugstore stuff. I'd smelled it before, I thought, but couldn't place where. I stayed quiet. The lock on the stall was a little loose, and I didn't want to draw attention. A second later, I heard the squeak of the door opening. Then, the soft creak of the stall next to mine. It opened, but there wasn't the usual rustle of clothes or sound of a bag hitting the hook. No flushing, no cough. Nothing. I waited. Probably just fixing their clothes, I told myself, tucking in a shirt or adjusting a belt. Still, the seconds dragged. I didn't move. The space under the partition between stalls was about 6 inches, just enough to see shoes. When I finally looked down, I saw them. Polished, black, shiny to the point they caught reflections from the overhead lights. Not sneakers, not boots. Dress shoes, the kind worn with a suit. The toe of the shoe tilted slightly toward my side, as if the person was standing angled toward me, waiting. I didn't breathe for a moment. Then I forced myself to pull out my phone and pretend to take a picture of the bathroom wall, just for something to do. I didn't know why that made me feel like I was in control again, but I did it. No sound, just the fake shutter click. The screen lit up the stall for a second, and I caught a glimpse of the rough graffiti scratched into the door. M+S forever. call me, and something unreadable scratched deep with a key. A message from Sheila popped up. Got the ice cream. Meet me at the counter. I stared at the text for a second longer than I should have. I typed back, coming now, then slid the phone into my back pocket. I stood slowly, 1 foot at a time, and unlocked the door without making noise. I wasn't going to wait for the other person to make the next move. I told myself that maybe this was nothing. Maybe someone was just fixing their jacket like I guessed. Maybe I was being paranoid. Still, I took a breath, and with my hand on the latch, I pushed the stall door open and stepped out. I turned the handle and stepped into the hallway, but he was already standing by the sinks, like he'd been waiting the whole time. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just looked at me, and something in his eyes felt wrong, too focused, like I was something he already owned. His body blocked most of the narrow corridor, and behind me was just the wall and the closed stall door. I tightened my grip on the camera strap, trying to keep my voice steady. "Excuse me? Kinda tight here?" I said, as flat as I could. He stepped back, but only half a step, still in my way. My pulse thumped in my ears. I didn't move yet. I raised the camera, pretending to photograph the exit sign at the end of the corridor. The lens caught his reflection in the metal hand dryer beside the sink. I zoomed in slightly. His expression didn't change, but I saw his right hand tighten into a fist, slow and deliberate, like he was checking his grip. Then, suddenly, the overhead lights went from dim yellow to bright white. A sharp click echoed as the door opened, and an older man stepped in, holding a styrofoam cup of coffee. He froze for half a second, surprised to see both of us in there, then gave a short nod, as if he hadn't expected company. I slipped past the man in the suit fast, feeling the edge of his sleeve brush my jacket. My shoulder jolted from the contact. Now there were 3 of us in the corridor. Me, the man in the suit, and the guy with the coffee. The new guy gave me a slightly confused look, then said, "You okay?" and took a step toward me. The man in the suit didn't reply, didn't even look at him. He turned slowly, pivoted like someone modeling on a catwalk, and walked away. His spine was unnaturally straight, and his steps made no sound even on the hard floor. I grabbed the elbow of the man with the coffee and gave it a squeeze. I tried to smile, like everything was fine, like I wasn't 2 seconds from shaking. Together, we walked down the hallway and back into the main area of the diner. Sheila was already standing at the counter with our order in a plastic tray, 2 cones melting fast. Her eyes widened the moment she saw me. She didn't say anything, just stepped aside so I could slide in next to her. Above the cashier, a small red dot blinked on a security camera. It comforted me more than it should have. Someone had seen. Something was recording. If anything went down now, there'd be proof. Maybe that's why he didn't follow. Maybe the sudden presence of another man, or the camera, or the crowd, was enough. We left as a group. Me, Sheila, and the older man, whose name I never got. We didn't talk much, just walked out together under the dull glow of the diner's sign. Outside, a few more cars had arrived, but the lot still felt mostly empty. The man in the suit was back near the parking area, now standing by a different vehicle, a sleek black sedan, not the SUV from earlier. Another man stood beside him, older, wearing sunglasses even though it was nearly midnight. They looked at each other, just a glance, no words. Then the man in the suit climbed into the sedan, shut the door without slamming it, and the car pulled away. No headlights, no turn signal. Just glided into the night like it had a map no one else could see. Later, I gave the security footage to the police. Sheila backed up everything I said. The video showed the man trailing behind me into the hallway, pausing each time I did, stopping, waiting. They confirmed it was all on tape. But when the officer closed his folder, he looked at me and said, "He didn't touch you. So, technically, there's no offense. Just be careful, all right? Don't go alone into places like that at night." That was it. No charges, no names, no follow-up. Now, when I carry my camera, it's not for fun. It's not for photos of birds or boardwalks. It's something to keep my hands full, my head up. A reason to keep looking around, scanning corners. I don't walk into narrow hallways without checking what's at the other end first. And even now, sometimes, when I'm somewhere quiet, like a train station late at night or an empty stairwell, I think I hear that same faint, deliberate step, or smell that same clean, expensive cologne. I always check the locks 3 times now. Not because I'm scared, just because I remember how thin that stall wall was, how long he stood there. Sometimes, safety isn't about being brave. It's about a second, a cup of coffee, a stranger opening the door at just the right time. Last July, my wife and I decided to take a family weekend trip out to the nature reserve. Nothing fancy, just a break from the city and somewhere the kids could stretch their legs. The original plan was to hit the hiking trail and then maybe stop by the visitor center. But once we got on the road, the GPS offered us a shortcut through the back routes. I remembered hearing something a few years back about an old railway tunnel somewhere off that way. Some online forum said it was abandoned but safe, and kids usually loved it. Beats another dull museum, I thought. The kids were already bored in the back seat, so when I mentioned it, they lit up. We turned off the asphalt onto a gravel road that wound its way through the pine forest. The trees stood tall and packed tight. Long shadows covered the path even though it was still afternoon. The car creaked now and then over the uneven surface, but it held up fine. I turned the radio off to listen to the forest, just wind and the occasional bird. My wife glanced at her phone and frowned. The signal had dropped to 1 bar. I told her that was the point, really. Disconnect, breathe, see something different. She didn't argue, just tucked the phone away. After maybe 15 more minutes, the trees thinned, and we saw it. A wide, black mouth of a tunnel cut into the side of a low ridge. It didn't look dangerous, just forgotten. Ivy and moss crept over the top, and the rusted rails poked through patches of gravel. I slowed the car and pulled up just short of the entrance. The kids unbuckled before I even turned the engine off, yelling over each other about who'd go in first. My wife told them to calm down. I grabbed the flashlight from the glove box, more out of habit than anything. I hadn't planned to go in far, just look around. We all got out and stretched after the drive. The air smelled like damp pine and old stone. Quiet, too quiet. No insects, no birds. Just us and the forest. I locked the car, pocketed the keys. That's when it happened. A sound came from inside the tunnel. Not loud, but sharp enough to break the calm. Metal dragging across concrete. Not steady, like something rolling, but in pulses. Shriek, pause, shriek. It didn't echo like I'd expected. The sound was dry, flat, too close. From the shadows inside, a figure stepped out. Slowly, deliberately. An older man, maybe 60 or more, tall and lean. He was pushing something. At first I thought it was a wheelbarrow, but as he came closer, I saw it was a motorized tiller with a round saw blade mounted where the plow should be. The machine wasn't on, but the blade turned with a slow, clicking rhythm. The sound it made was the same as before, metal teeth skipping over rough concrete. He didn't say a word. No wave, no nod, no expression. Just kept coming. His boots scraped the gravel. He wore a heavy flannel shirt, sleeves rolled, dirt up to his elbows. His face was blank, not angry, not friendly, just empty. The kids stopped moving. My wife grabbed their hands and pulled them behind her. I stepped forward a little and raised a hand. "Good afternoon," I said. "We're just passing through. Tourists. Thought we'd have a quick look at the tunnel." Nothing. He didn't stop. He didn't speed up either. Just a steady approach, the blade on that thing spinning even though the motor clearly wasn't running. It was quiet enough to hear the soft creak of the handle under his grip. I glanced at my wife. Her eyes were fixed on him. The kids were silent for once. I couldn't hear anything else. No wind, no birds, not even the trees moving. The man closed the distance slowly, maybe 20 feet away now. I didn't move, didn't raise my voice again. Something about the way he looked through us, not at us, made my scalp crawl. The air felt colder than it should have been. He was still coming. I turned around and said, "In the car, now." No one argued. My wife opened the back door and shoved the kids in before slamming it shut. I moved fast but didn't run. Some instinct told me not to look scared. The sound of metal ticking on stone followed us, steady and slow. I got in, started the engine, and threw it into reverse. I didn't floor it. Too much gravel, too easy to lose control. We backed up slow and steady, the tires crunching as we moved. The man stopped right under the tunnel arch. Just stood there, machine still spinning, body rigid. His eyes didn't leave the windshield. I could see him clearly through the rearview mirror. His gray hair was matted to his forehead with sweat, even though the air was cool. His face didn't move at all, like he wasn't blinking. We made it far enough to turn without hitting the ditch. I eased the wheel around and got us pointed back the way we came. We started down the gravel road again, retracing our path through the trees. The forest seemed darker now. I kept checking the mirror. A minute later, I saw it. Dust rising in the rear view. Then the engine noise hit. A loud roar, faster, angry. A gray pickup flew into view, tearing up the road behind us. Its headlights flashed wildly, left, right, like it was trying to get our attention or mess with our heads. He was following us. The road felt tighter than before, and every dip threatened to throw the tires off track. The sides were soft and sloped. Too much speed and we'd slide into the trees. I gripped the wheel harder, trying not to panic. My wife was dialing 911 over and over, but the signal bar didn't move. She shook her head, holding the phone out like that might change something. The pickup kept gaining. I saw the hood in the mirror, then the front bumper. It darted side to side like he was looking for an opening to get around us, or maybe force us off. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew I couldn't let him get closer. The car rattled like it would come apart. Stones banged up into the chassis. The kids were crying now, huddled low in their seats, and I couldn't even turn around to calm them. I was too focused on not losing control. Every corner felt like a trap. Then I saw it. The green highway sign just ahead. My exit. I pressed the pedal down hard. The wheels slipped a little but caught again, and we shot forward. The trees thinned. The light changed, and suddenly we were breaking through to the edge of the road. I turned sharp onto the on-ramp. The pickup stayed with us, matching every move. I heard his tires squeal as he followed. The main road came into view, cars flying by in both directions. I didn't slow. I merged hard, cutting into the right lane. A horn blared, but we made it. In the mirror, the pickup slowed suddenly, the flow of traffic boxing him in. He turned off into the shoulder, raising a cloud of dirt as he veered right and disappeared behind a small rise. I kept driving, didn't say a word. No one did. We pulled into a gas station 10 minutes later. I parked by the side of the lot, far from the pumps. My hands were shaking when I took them off the wheel. I hadn't even realized. I stepped out and checked the car. A long scratch ran down the side panel near the back wheel. A small dent near the trunk. Looked like a rock had hit us. I didn't want the kids to see it, so I walked around to block their view. My wife got on the phone and called the sheriff's office. I explained everything. Man in the tunnel, tiller with a saw blade, gray pickup. The dispatcher asked me to wait while she got someone. When the deputy came on, I gave the same story. I could tell by the pause that he didn't believe me. Guy with a saw blade? Just walking out the tunnel? Yes, silent, just walking straight at us. We gave them the license plate. Thankfully, my wife snapped a blurry photo just before we turned off. They took the report, but nothing came of it. No arrest, no follow-up. I started researching trail routes before every trip after that. I don't drive into woods unless I know exactly where each turn leads, and there's always a signal. My wife jokes that I've gone soft, that I used to be the one pushing for more dirt roads and less planning. Maybe I have. But I still remember his face, blank and fixed. The way that machine kept spinning without power. The sound it made. The way the forest went silent. It all felt wrong. The loudest thing that day wasn't the kids crying or the engine roaring or the gravel smashing under the tires. It was the feeling that life can end on some forgotten road, and no one will ever find out why. Last May, I stayed late in the workshop, finishing a scale model for my architecture class. It was close to 11 when I finally packed up. The campus was still lit, windows glowing in some of the buildings, a couple students walking in groups near the dorms. But my apartment was off campus, about 15 minutes away, and the fastest way there was through a side street that cut behind the science building and past a row of closed shops. It had rained earlier, and the pavement reflected everything. Lamplight, passing headlights, even the dull glow of the vending machines outside the 24-hour laundromat. I walked fast, not running, just enough to keep the rhythm up. I kept my keys between my fingers like I always do when walking alone at night. It's something I learned back in high school. One of those simple tricks girls pick up because we have to. The street was quiet. Too quiet. The music in my earbuds was low, just a whisper. I always keep it that way when I'm walking alone, enough to hear something behind me if I need to. A car passed once, slow, probably looking for parking. A cat jumped from a dumpster and startled me, but I kept moving. The smell of damp cardboard and fried oil lingered in the air. It was when I crossed the small alley behind the old bakery that I finally relaxed. I shouldn't have. That was the mistake. I thought I was in the clear, just 5 minutes from home. I even started planning what I'd eat before bed. Then the motorcycle appeared. It came from behind the corner like it had always been there, moving slowly but deliberately. At first I thought it was a food delivery guy. There's a Thai place down the block that closes late. But as the bike rolled up beside me, I noticed the helmets. Both riders wore full black helmets. No branding, no lights on the bike, no reflective jackets. That's when I knew something was wrong. The engine went quiet. It stopped right next to me. I froze. The guy on the back hopped off, and I immediately turned toward the lit intersection, maybe 20 meters ahead. But he moved faster than I expected, cutting off my path, stepping in front of me like he'd practiced it. He didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me from behind the visor. Then he pulled a short pistol from his jacket, pointed it directly at my chest and said, "Phone and code." That was it. 2 words. Flat, like he was ordering a drink. My hands didn't feel like mine. I held my phone tight like it would protect me somehow, but my legs wouldn't move. My breath was stuck somewhere between chest and throat. I couldn't tell if people were nearby. I couldn't hear anything but the blood in my ears. "No," I said. "I didn't mean to. It just came out. Not loud. Just a reflex." He didn't flinch. He didn't even hesitate. He pulled the trigger. There was a loud click, not a bang. Like a toy gun. Like something misfired. We both stood there for a second, frozen. I flinched backwards so hard my shoulder slammed into the brick wall behind me. The shock jolted me into motion. The guy with the pistol looked at the weapon like it had betrayed him, shaking it slightly like that would make a difference. The other one twisted the throttle and the motorcycle roared to life, the sudden noise slicing through the silence like a blade. It was a reminder. They could come back. They could try again. But they didn't. The guy with the gun gave up in a flash. He turned, ran back to the bike, and jumped onto the seat in one smooth motion. The driver gunned it, and they vanished into the night, the roar fading fast as they sped toward the main road. I stood there, still pressed against the wall, legs shaking so badly I almost fell. My brain struggled to register the fact that I was still standing, still alive. My phone buzzed in my hand. A message came in. Some friend reminding me about class tomorrow. That small, normal sound pushed me over the edge. I dropped to my knees, gripping the phone like a lifeline as tears started falling without warning. I wasn't even crying properly, just leaking, like something inside had sprung a leak from the pressure. It took me a minute to call the police. I didn't trust my voice, but I forced myself to speak clearly. Told them where I was, what happened. They said a unit was nearby and would be there in minutes. I stayed put, back against the same wall, eyes scanning every shadow like they might roll back for a second try. The patrol car showed up in about 10 minutes, though it felt like an hour. 2 officers stepped out, a younger woman and an older guy. They approached slowly, hands visible, calm voices. I pointed to the spot where it all happened, trying to sound normal. The male officer crouched near the curb and picked something up with a pen. It was a bullet-shaped lighter. A fake round with a pull-out wick. Something that looked real enough in a dark street, real enough to terrify. He turned it in his gloved fingers and said, "Looks like they meant to scare, but grabbed the wrong toy." His tone was casual, but I could still see the alertness in his eyes. He didn't think it was a joke. They checked for cameras and found one on the liquor store across the street. The owner, some old guy in pajamas, let them in. It caught a glimpse of the license plate as the motorcycle turned the corner. Not a full plate, but enough. The cops said they'd open a case and promised to follow up. I gave them my name, ID, phone number, and tried to write a full statement, but my hand kept shaking. One of the detectives who arrived later asked if I realized how brave I'd been. I nodded, but I didn't feel brave. All I could think was how stupid it was to say no to a guy pointing a gun at my chest. I hadn't meant to resist. I just reacted without thinking. That wasn't courage. It was stubbornness, or maybe shock, or both. A month later, they called me back. The motorcycle was found outside the city limits, behind a half-collapsed shed, completely burned. Whatever numbers had been left on the plate were fake. They hadn't been registered to anything real. No prints, no cameras nearby, no leads. The officers said they'd keep the case open, but I knew how that worked. No suspects, no progress. It was over. I got rid of my phone. Not because it was damaged, it still worked fine, but because I couldn't look at it without thinking of that second. That cold metal pressed against my chest, and the stupid buzzing message that came after. I bought a new one with a plain black case and no history. Since then, I talked to the younger girls at the workshop. First years, interns, even the ones who just started showing up late to finish projects. I tell them to stay in groups, call rides, avoid shortcuts, And if someone ever asks for your phone, just give it. Life is worth more than any piece of plastic and glass. Most nights I sleep fine now. But sometimes, especially when I walk alone, I hear that click again in my head. That one dry sound, louder than any gunshot. It splits everything, before and after. And no matter how far I get from that alley, it's still with me. Last winter I was working night shifts at a small, cheap hotel by the coast. The kind of place that only really gets visitors during the summer. By the time December hit, we had maybe 3 guests on a good night. The cafe downstairs closed by 9, and management didn't think it was worth it to hire a security guard. Most nights were dead quiet. I'd sit behind the front desk with the heater on low, filling out log sheets and listening to the wind whistling through the door frame gaps. You could hear every creak in the building when the wind hit hard. There wasn't much to do, just paperwork and watching the entrance. My friend Tom, a local plumber, usually stopped by around 11. He'd bring over some stale donuts from the diner where his girlfriend worked and pour himself coffee from the pot I kept behind the desk. It was a small comfort during those cold, slow nights. That night was no different. Tom came in just after 11, shaking off the sleet from his coat and carrying a paper bag. We sat in the empty lobby and talked about how the fishing had been slow this year. He was thinking about heading inland for work if the harbor didn't pick up by spring. I barely listened, just nodded, watching the security monitor flicker between the parking lot and the rear hallway. By midnight, he stood up and stretched, saying something about checking the plumbing in room 207. A guest had mentioned the hot water was slow earlier that day. He grabbed his tool bag from behind the desk and headed upstairs. I waved him off, thinking the only bad thing that could happen that night was maybe a burst pipe. I didn't think to check on him. There was no reason to. The hallway lights upstairs worked fine, and the building was too small for anyone to get lost. I leaned back in the chair and looked at the half-filled report on the counter. Outside, the wind had picked up. You could hear the signs outside the building flapping hard against their metal mounts. Then the entrance door gave that high-pitched beep it always did when it opened. It was automatic, and it squealed a little when the sensor triggered. Normally it was followed by the chime of the register if a guest walked in for something. But this time, the register's motion sensor didn't beep. Just the door. I looked up. 2 men came in fast, heads down, shoulders hunched like they were bracing against the wind. Both had long scarves wrapped up high, almost covering their faces. One was taller, walked with a sort of light bounce in his step. He didn't hesitate, came straight for the counter like he knew where to go. The other one stopped near the entrance and stayed there, his back to the wall, head tilted, watching the street through the glass. I stood up slowly. The taller one was already close. Too close. I forced a smile and asked, "Can I help you with something?" My voice sounded normal, but inside everything went still. He didn't say anything. Instead, he pulled out a wooden baton from under his coat and slammed it down hard on the counter. The sound cracked through the lobby, echoing off the bare walls and tile. I flinched. Not back, but just froze where I stood. The echo died down, and it felt even quieter after that hit. The guy at the door didn't move. He just gave a small nod, like giving permission. The one in front of me stepped around the counter. He jumped the counter fast. I saw the blur of his scarf and coat. Then the baton came down hard on my shoulder. Pain shot straight through me and I dropped, landing hard on the tiles. My head smacked the floor and white sparks burst behind my eyes. For a second, I couldn't hear anything but a high ringing in my ears. I tried to push myself up, but my arm wouldn't move right. Everything tilted sideways. He was already behind the desk, yanking open drawers, tossing things aside. The cash box wasn't locked, just one of those metal drawers we kept in a cabinet. The envelope with the week's earnings, still uncounted, slid out. It was thick with 50s and 20s. He grabbed it, stuffing it into his coat. I could see him through one eye. The other was already starting to swell. The man by the door hadn't moved. Then I heard it. Tom's voice from the stairs. "Hey, what the?" he shouted. His boots hit the floor fast, heavy steps coming down. The lookout spun around and charged down the corridor toward the stairwell. I couldn't see Tom anymore, just heard a scuffle. Boots sliding, something metal clanging. Then a sound I didn't recognize at first. A sharp beep, followed by the rising howl of the alarm system. Tom had slammed the emergency button by the fire hose cabinet. Everything shifted in a second. The one behind the desk snarled something, bolted from the drawer, and both of them ran for the door. The alarm was wailing now, a high, piercing sound that echoed through the building and out into the street. I heard the glass door bang open, the night air flooding in with a gust. I tried to get up. My arms were shaking and my legs felt hollow. The pain in my shoulder was spreading down my ribs. I was still half on my side when Tom rushed back in and grabbed me under the arms. He got me up to a sitting position, leaning me against the front desk. His face was red, breathing hard. I could feel something warm trickling down my back, blood from the head hit probably. The siren screamed on, cutting through the wind outside. Then we heard a car engine turn over. It coughed once, then roared alive. Tires squealed against the pavement. Tom ran to the door and looked out, but the car was already gone. He came back, crouched next to me. We didn't say anything, just sat there while the alarm kept screaming and the night slowly closed back in. It took the police 7 minutes to arrive. Felt like longer. When the sirens finally came, the lights lit up the whole front of the building in red and blue. I watched it all sideways through blurry vision. One officer came in with a flashlight and checked every room, while another took Tom aside to get a statement. Paramedics came in right after and started wrapping my head. They moved fast, but not rough. I only realized how bad it was when I saw the blood on their gloves. They took the footage from the security cameras. It didn't show much. Just two guys in dark jackets, scarves pulled high, baseball caps low. No faces, no plates on the car, no fingerprints left behind. I sat on the stretcher with a bandage around my head, watching the officers go back and forth, asking the same questions again. What time? What direction? What kind of car? I didn't have any answers they didn't already guess. The next day I was admitted to the hospital. Mild concussion, torn muscle in my left shoulder. They kept me for a week. Tom came by twice. He brought coffee and a sandwich the second time. Said he couldn't sleep much after that night. Said he kept thinking about what would have happened if he'd come in 10 seconds later. I didn't ask him what he thought would have happened to me. The hotel moved quick. They installed a bulletproof glass barrier at the front desk, hired a night guard from some private firm. Looked like a cop, moved like a soldier. Tom joked about it the first time we saw him. Said we were finally becoming a real resort. But the laugh didn't sound real. It came out shaky, thin, like he didn't expect it to land. A month later, I got a call from the detective. Said they were closing the case for now. No leads, no suspects, no witnesses willing to come forward. I thanked him and hung up. I went back to work the next week. My arms still hurt when I reached for things, and sometimes I lost track of conversations if someone spoke too fast. But I needed the job. Bills were coming, and no one waits. Now, every night I sit behind the new glass, watching the parking lot through a reinforced window. The cash drawer's locked with 2 keys. The alarm panel blinks at me from the wall. And every time the door makes that high-pitched beep, I look up fast. Sometimes I think I see scarves in the dark. Just movement. Just shapes. But they're never real. Still, I keep watching. Because the thing that keeps coming back isn't the baton or the blood. It's that scarf. A regular winter scarf, wrapped tight over a stranger's face. And the quiet moment when I realized it wasn't for warmth. It was so no one would recognize the man who decided that my life, that night, was worth whatever he could grab from a drawer. It happened last spring, when my parents finally let me and my two friends rent a small apartment by the sea. First time ever without adults. It felt like we were suddenly real grown-ups, just because we had keys to a place with a balcony and could order pizza at midnight. The weather was nice, not hot yet, and the streets were mostly quiet. It was early season, so the apartment complex wasn't packed. That gave the place a weirdly empty vibe, but we didn't think much of it. The apartment was on the 3rd floor, had 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a balcony that faced an alley and part of the parking lot. We tossed our bags onto the beds and picked spots like kids on a sleepover. Mark got excited about the guest book sitting on a table in the lobby, a little spiral-bound notebook where previous tenants had left notes and jokes. Most of the entries were in Russian or Ukrainian, some in English. A few drawings. Mark grinned and said, "Let's leave our gamer tags. For followers, like a hidden Easter egg." So we did. I scribbled mine. King Pixel 77, right under someone's weird poem about the sea. It felt stupid but funny at the time. We didn't expect anyone to see it. That night, we were still hyped up after the train ride. We walked around the complex, peeking into empty rec rooms and locked offices. The elevators were old and slow, so we took the stairs mostly. Around midnight, we found the fitness room. It was supposed to be closed, but the door wasn't locked. Just had a sign taped over it saying under maintenance. We pushed it open anyway. Inside, the air was stale, like no one had been in for months. Most of the equipment was pushed to the sides, dusty. A few overhead lights still worked. Mark climbed onto the treadmill and pretended to run while making zombie noises. I snapped a few photos of them goofing off on the machines, nothing too crazy. At one point, Nikita tried to lift a dumbbell and dropped it, making a loud bang that echoed through the hall. We laughed like idiots. Eventually, we went back to the room. I plugged in my phone, but didn't even check it. I passed out on the couch watching some dumb show. It was around 2 a.m. Next morning, I woke up to the sound of shouting. At first, I thought they were just messing around, but the tone was off. Mark was in the next room, yelling my name. Nikita stood in the kitchenette holding his phone with both hands, staring at the screen like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. My phone was blinking non-stop. I had over 300 notifications. Instagram, Telegram, Twitter, all of them going off. I opened Insta first. My DMs were full of spam. Worse than spam. There were hundreds of screenshots, my old posts, memes I shared, a few selfies from last year. But now they all had captions added in some other app, twisted, disgusting ones. Mark shouted from his room, "Bro, check your mentions. Check your mentions now." I opened Twitter. My handle was tagged in dozens of threads, many by accounts I didn't recognize. Some of the accounts had profile pics that looked like anime girls. Others had no photos at all. They were tagging me, Mark, and Nikita in some kind of porn roleplay threads. Stuff about minors, stuff about blackmail, revenge, made-up stories, photoshopped images. I could barely keep scrolling. It was that bad. Nikita stormed into the room. "Look at this! Look at this, man!" He threw his phone onto the couch next to me. Someone had posted an old photo of us at a LAN party. We were just sitting at our computers, but now it had a new caption. Something sick. And his real name was tagged. I tried to reset my passwords. Gmail, Twitter, Discord, anything that might have been connected. But every time I clicked send verification code, it got intercepted. I tried changing my number, but it was too late. Somehow, Whoever it was already had access. A few times I got the code texts before I even clicked the button to send them. That was the worst part. Mark came out holding his laptop. His hands were shaking. "There's a photo," he said, "of our door. From the hallway. From here." He turned the screen toward me. There it was. The entryway to our unit. Same doormat, same little scratch near the frame we noticed yesterday. It had been posted to a locked account that I didn't follow, but someone had taken a screenshot and reposted it. Nikita started locking the balcony door and windows. We ran straight to the front desk, still in slippers and with phones clutched in our hands. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman maybe in her 40s, barely looked up at first. I slammed my hand on the counter and demanded camera footage. She blinked, looked from me to Nikita, then at Mark, who was pointing to the hallway on the lobby monitor. "There are no hallway cameras right now," she said. "Electrical maintenance, some short circuit last week." "What about the gym?" I asked. "Same. No power to that wing. Been down since Monday." Our voices echoed through the empty lobby. Mark kept asking who had access to the floors. Nikita wanted a list of staff. The woman, now clearly nervous, just kept repeating that we should speak to building management during work hours. But it was Sunday. No one else was on site. We gave up after 15 minutes of yelling at someone who had no answers. Went back to our floor, locked the door behind us, and pulled the blinds shut. Mark stuck a small towel over the peephole with duct tape. Nikita went downstairs and ripped our names off the mailbox slots. We stopped using real names even with food delivery. Stopped using phones unless necessary. I deleted every post I could, changed profile pictures to blank icons. We didn't tell our parents. What could we say? Hey, we got doxxed because we scribbled our dumb nicknames in a guest book like idiots. No way. We decided to stick together in the living room. One mattress on the floor, two on the couch cushions. Nobody left the apartment alone. Even a trip to the vending machine downstairs was a group thing now. By nightfall, the silence started to crawl under my skin. The blinds were always drawn, and every creak in the hallway felt like someone stopping at our door. The world outside didn't feel real anymore. Inside, it felt like we were prey. The police finally came, almost 3 hours after we filed the online report. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both in plain clothes. They asked if there was a break-in. We said no. They asked if anything was stolen. Again, no. Then it's a cyber incident, the male officer said. You need to document everything. Screenshots, dates, times. Don't delete anything yet. The woman added, and stay off public platforms for now. Don't reply to any messages. Don't try to fight back. We told them about the photo of our door, about the hacked accounts. The man nodded slowly, like he'd heard similar things before. He said most fake accounts were controlled by bots, but someone had taken the photo. That meant physical access. Nikita brought up the guest book. We wrote our nicknames there, he said. Room number 2. I pulled out the photo I'd taken the night we arrived. A shot of the page, with our gamer tags under a doodle of a sword. I handed it to the woman. She stared at it, then showed her partner. He whistled quietly. This place leaves these out in the open? Anyone could have gone through it, I said. He nodded again. We'll take it in for analysis. Maybe we can lift prints or find out who accessed it. But that was it. They couldn't trace the fake accounts unless they had probable cause, and even then, getting IPs took weeks. All they could do for now was write up a report and tell us to stay offline. They left with the photo, and our door felt thinner when it shut behind them. Days passed. We didn't go anywhere. Not even to the beach. We lived off frozen dumplings and instant soup. One of us always stayed awake at night. Even when things calmed down online, the tension didn't go away. The posts slowed, likes disappeared, fake accounts were suspended, but nothing felt resolved. We didn't know who it was or why they picked us. 2 weeks later, the investigation had stalled. We didn't hear back from the officers. We stopped checking. It was clear this wasn't going to end with an arrest or apology. We locked down our profiles, changed our emails, ditched the numbers we used before. I froze my debit card and got a new one. Our vacation turned into a kind of voluntary lockdown. We never used the gym again. Never went near the lobby unless we had to. One morning, I wiped the photo of the guest book from my phone, but it stayed in my head. Now, I don't sign anything in public. No check-ins, no guest books, no shared stories. I don't leave a trail. The internet remembers too well. And whoever's watching might be closer than your roommate. We wanted likes. What we got was a lesson. In the digital world, the door is never really closed. Last fall, the whole campus buzzed with rumors about the 7th wing of the chemistry building. It wasn't on any student map anymore. They said it was condemned years ago, but no one officially confirmed it. The place stood like a gray concrete lump behind the new science center. Every window was boarded shut, and the doors were welded. It looked like no one had touched it in a decade, but people swore they saw lights in there at night. Someone said a student died there in the early 2000s. He drowned in a basement bathroom when the pipes burst and flooded the place. No one found him for hours. That's what they said. Every version of the story had different details, but always the same ending. Water up to the ceiling, and the guy face down in it. A few said you could still hear splashing sounds at night if you walked close enough. One guy in my dorm even swore he saw movement behind the plywood once. I didn't believe any of it. I'm not into ghost stories, but I do like proving people wrong. So I said I'd go in and take a photo of that bathroom. No ghosts, no legends, I told them. Just an old, moldy building. It was supposed to be a joke, a dare with a photo for proof. They all laughed and said I wouldn't do it. That just made me want to more. I waited until the weekend, when campus security was thinner. It was already dark when I walked across the grass behind the chemistry center. The wind was sharp, and all the windows around the real labs were glowing with warm yellow light, but the 7th wing was totally black. I had a small flashlight, a power bank, and my phone. I found the maintenance hatch behind a dumpster. It was a metal cover sunk into the dirt, rusted and flaking. I'd found it earlier that week and loosened it up with a wrench. That night, I lifted it open, and the smell hit me instantly. Wet cement, rot, something metallic underneath. It wasn't strong, but it was old. Still, I climbed down. The ladder was steel and cold, slick in some spots with moss or rust. I moved slow, holding the flashlight in my teeth while gripping the rungs. The tunnel at the bottom was narrow and low, just enough space to stand. Concrete walls stretched ahead with water stains creeping up from the base. I stepped carefully, watching where my feet landed. The air was thick and dead. No draft, no sound. The corridor ran straight for maybe 20 meters. Light from my flashlight showed old pipes overhead and peeling paint on the walls. Lockers lined one side, their doors warped and hanging open. Some were empty. Others still had paper inside. Soggy sheets stuck to the metal. I passed a broken chair, a mop handle, then a shattered clock on the floor. Every few steps, something small would crunch underfoot. I think it was glass. The deeper I went, the heavier the silence felt. My footsteps were too loud. I didn't want to stop, but I didn't want to rush either. It felt like something might notice if I made the wrong kind of noise. But that's just what my brain does in places like that. I kept walking, aiming for the back of the hall where the bathroom supposedly was. Every few seconds, I turned around to check behind me. Nothing. Just the tunnel, dark and still. At the end of the hallway, there was a metal door with faded paint. The sign had peeled off, but someone had spray painted a smiley face where it used to be. I didn't pause. I pushed through it, into a stairwell that dropped downward. The railings were rusted, and the stairs were narrow. Just enough room for one person. They creaked under my weight. Not a normal creak, though. It was deep, like something bending slow, not ready to hold anything anymore. The flashlight started flickering. I banged it with my hand, and it steadied. About halfway down, I heard a cough. It came from below, low, thick, like someone with a bad chest cold. Just once. It echoed up through the stairwell and disappeared. I froze. I listened for another sound, anything, a footstep, a shift, breath. But there was nothing after. My mind tried to explain it. Could be water in the pipes. Could be an echo from somewhere above. The place was old, full of air pockets and weird acoustics. I stayed still, barely breathing, then slowly kept moving. My foot slipped a little on one step, and I grabbed the rail. It flaked under my hand. I kept going. The flashlight was shaking in my grip now, not from fear, I told myself, just the way the stairs jolted my hand. The bottom of the stairwell opened to a concrete landing, and across from it was the door. It was brown once, now just rust-colored and blotched. The hinges were exposed and corroded. The door was half open, tilted in like someone forgot to close it all the way. I put my hand on it and pushed. The hinges screamed when I moved it. I stepped inside. The room stank immediately. Not like the tunnel, this was worse. Like something had been sitting in water for way too long. I aimed the flashlight around. The tiles were broken in places. Graffiti covered the walls, not just random tags, but big words. The one closest to the entrance said, "Get out," in dripping red letters. I rolled my eyes and raised my phone. I took a picture, then another, aiming at the row of stalls. A sound like crinkling plastic snapped behind me. I spun around fast, nearly dropping the flashlight. By the sinks, a man stood still in the beam. He wore a filthy coat that clung to his thin frame, damp at the edges like it had soaked up the floor. His face was hollow, bones sharp beneath pale skin, eyes too wide and glossy, catching the light like wet stones. He didn't move at first, just looked at me, like I'd interrupted something. Then he whispered, voice scraping like sandpaper, "You're loud." I stepped back fast, hitting the edge of the sink with my hip. He took a step forward, slow but direct. I could smell him now, sweat, mold, and something metallic, like pennies soaked in water. I grabbed a rusted pipe on the wall to steady myself. Then he lunged. His hand shot out trying to grab my arm. I jerked away, but his fingers caught the sleeve of my hoodie. I screamed and swung the flashlight with both hands, metal end first. It cracked against his wrist, a sharp, ringing smack like hitting a pipe. He let out a rough grunt and stumbled sideways, clutching his hand. I didn't wait. I turned and saw a window near the stalls. The glass was broken. A few shards still clung to the edges, but most had fallen away. I sprinted and dove toward it, not caring what was on the other side. My hands hit the frame, and the broken edges cut deep as I shoved through. My knees landed in wet grass. The cold outside air slapped me in the face, heavy with rain and soil. I rolled, crawled forward, then got to my feet, gasping. Behind me, from inside the bathroom, came a roar. Not a growl, not even a word. Just a raw, furious sound, broken by the crackle of rusted walls. He didn't follow, but his voice did, chasing me through the trees and dark. I didn't stop running until the lights of the dorms came into view. My lungs burned, and blood soaked my sleeves. I slammed through the side entrance and ran into the common room, where two of my friends were playing some game on the floor. They jumped up at the sight of me, red-faced, breathing hard, bleeding. I couldn't speak at first. One of them grabbed a towel and pressed it to my hand. The other called campus security. When the police arrived, I sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, both hands covered in clean dish towels. An officer with a notepad asked me to walk them through everything. I told them about the tunnel, the stairs, the graffiti, the man. I said he attacked me. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't have to. The blood on my palms was enough. They brought more officers. 3 cars, all lights off. They searched the 7th wing, top to bottom. I watched from a window, bandaged and silent. An hour later, one of them came back. He said they found a sleeping bag near the bathroom, some food wrappers, a rusted can opener, and a plastic shopping bag full of old clothes. "He's gone," one officer told us. "Probably moved out through the drain lines. There's a maze under that wing. Storm sewers, maintenance shafts. We don't have access to most of them." I nodded, but didn't answer. My fingers twitched. Every creak in the hallway made me flinch. I kept thinking I'd hear him again. That cough, that whisper. They sealed the building the next day, welded the doors, bolted the hatch. Even blocked the tunnel entrance behind the dumpsters. Patrols were doubled for 2 weeks. People on campus treated me like I'd won the dare, like I was brave. But I didn't feel like that. I kept the photo. Just one. A blurry shot of the sink, the grime, and the red spray-painted "Get Out." The rest were lost. The flashlight hit the floor in the bathroom, and I never picked it up. That image stayed on my phone like a warning. Sometimes I still look at it. Not because I want to remember, but because I need to remind myself where pushing too far leads. No ghosts in that building. No drowned student. But there was someone else. Someone pushed out of sight. Out of life. Hiding in the shadows of a place no one checked anymore. I thought I was being smart, chasing proof. But I learned that logic doesn't matter when adrenaline kicks in. Curiosity feels brave until it leads you straight into someone else's nightmare. Now, I listen when fear whispers. It's not weakness. Sometimes fear is the only thing telling the truth. This January, I went up to Tyler's family cabin with him and our other friend Mark. We needed a break from college finals, and Tyler said his folks had a place near a lake, out past a logging road that loses cell signal about 7 miles in. That sounded perfect. Just the 3 of us. Beer, food, a fireplace, and no one to bug us. The drive took forever with all the slush on the back roads, and it was pitch dark when we finally pulled up to the place. But the cabin was real. Wooden porch, deer antlers nailed above the door, stacked firewood on the side. Looked like something out of a survival movie. Inside, it was cramped but cozy. A fireplace in the living room, 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen. We dumped our bags, opened a couple beers, and started talking about nothing. By the time the wind picked up outside, we'd gotten a fire going and decided to cook sausages over it. Tyler joked that we were roughing it, and laughed like this was the most outdoorsy thing he'd done all year. We used coat hangers we'd bent into skewers, and the fat popped over the flames. The sound of the rain started soft, then picked up like someone dragging a stick across the roof. Mark was scrolling through his downloaded music when the first rumble of thunder hit. A second later, the lights flickered. We all looked up, half laughing. The flickering kept happening every couple minutes. No big deal, just old wiring. The storm was getting louder. Thunder started to roll in across the lake, long and low. We turned the lights off ourselves after a while and just sat by the fire, letting it light the room. Someone said, "This is how horror movies start," and we all laughed. Then Tyler said, "Wait, wait." He disappeared into one of the bedrooms and came back with something wrapped in an old towel. He unwrapped it and held up a long hunting rifle. "Belonged to my granddad," he said. "No ammo, just for the vibe." It looked legit. Dark wood, old metal parts, smelled like oil. He handed it to Mark, who held it like he was in a western, then passed it to me. It was heavier than I thought. I pointed it at the wall and mimed a shot. We started taking turns shooting at random stuff. Books, the couch cushion, a crack in the window frame. Mark said, "Bet I could hit that log out there." He pointed through the window at a big piece of driftwood maybe 20 feet away. It was barely visible in the dark. We joked about marksman training and acted like we were on some secret mission. That's when the first lightning bolt hit close. Real close. It lit up the whole shoreline, the trees, everything. The log outside turned bright white for a second, and we all jerked away from the window. "Damn!" Tyler shouted. "That was right across the lake." We laughed it off, a little jumpy, but still just messing around. Then the lights went out completely. I got up to grab another beer from the cooler by the door. As I reached down, another flash hit. It was longer this time, and I could see everything outside. The rain coming down sideways, the trees thrashing, and right at the edge of the yard, about 10 meters out, there was someone on the ground. At first, I didn't even register it. Just a shape. Then my eyes caught the details. It was a person. Looked like they were crawling. Real low to the ground, almost hugging it. Wearing a long, wet raincoat. Head down. One arm dragging forward. They were moving toward the cabin. I froze, holding the beer can, and blinked hard. It was dark again. "Guys," I said. "Guys, someone's outside." Mark didn't even look up. Lightning makes trees look like people, man. Happens all the time. "No," I said louder. "I saw someone. Crawling." Tyler stood up. "Where?" I pointed. "By the stump, about 10 meters out, right before the woods start." He walked to the window and looked out. Nothing but darkness and sheets of rain. Another lightning flash came a few seconds later, but there was nothing. Just the log. Trees behind it. No one. "There's nothing there," Tyler said. "It was just a shadow. Light messes with your eyes in the rain." I stepped up next to him, peering out hard. The figure was gone. Mark added, "Seriously, your brain fills in the gaps. You probably saw a bush move or something." I didn't argue, but I walked to the door anyway. The lock was just a basic twist knob, old brass thing. I turned it to make sure it was engaged. It clicked into place. I looked out the peephole, but it was completely black. No porch light, no moonlight, just water dripping down the window. The wind shook the trees again, and a loud crack echoed from the woods. A branch or something. I stepped back from the door. Only the fire was still going. Everything else was dark. Tyler sat back down and tossed another log on. Mark was still on the floor, scrolling through his music with a flashlight. Nothing else happened for a few minutes. Just thunder rolling and the wind beating against the siding. I didn't say anything else. Maybe it had been nothing. Maybe. But I kept looking back at the window every time a flash went off. About an hour later, the power went out for good. The hum of the fridge died, and everything went quiet except the fire crackling and the storm hammering the windows. Tyler found a flashlight in a drawer and set it on the table, pointing the beam up so it lit the ceiling. The light was weak, and the shadows in the corners seemed to move with every flicker. We were just sitting there, drinking warm beer and waiting it out. Then we heard it. It was soft at first, almost hidden under the sound of the wind. A scratch, like a tree branch dragging slowly across a window pane. But the cabin was set back from the woods. Nothing should be that close. We went quiet, listening. The scratching came again, longer this time. Josh grabbed the flashlight and swept it toward the window. For a second, the beam caught something. A face. Right against the glass. Pressed so close that the condensation made it shine. It looked like it had no expression. Just eyes and skin tight against the wet window. We screamed. All three of us. The storm roared right after, thunder crashing like a cannon and swallowing the sound. By the time we looked back, the face was gone. Then we heard the back door. A long, slow creak. It came from the kitchen side of the cabin. Tyler was already up. He grabbed the rifle from beside the fireplace and raised it. There shouldn't have been any shells, but he pulled the trigger anyway. The shot went off, deafening in that small room. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The echo bounced around the walls. Josh pointed the light toward the kitchen. Nothing moved, but rain was falling straight in through the open door. The beam cut through the water, making it look like strings hanging from the air. There was no figure, just the open door swaying slowly with the wind. "We're leaving!" I yelled, like it would scare whoever was there. The flashlight flicked past the window again. Nothing. But the wind shoved the door wide open. Tyler and I rushed it, slammed it shut, and threw the bolt across. There was a chain, too, which we latched on. The hinges groaned under the pressure of the wind. Then the windows started rattling. Not from the storm. The pressure was wrong. They weren't shaking all at once, just one at a time, in a slow rhythm, like someone moving around the house, tapping or pushing. We stood frozen, backs against the door, watching every window in the room. In each one, when lightning flashed, we caught pieces of the same image. A black shape in a long coat, half reflected, half real, just outside the glass. We didn't speak. No one said anything. Tyler dropped the spent shell from the rifle and pulled out one of the dummy rounds his grandfather had kept. Old, dented brass casings, just for show. He loaded it anyway. We took turns sitting by the windows, flashlight aimed out, waiting for another sign. The wind tore through the trees, and the fire went out sometime before morning. We stayed like that until the sun came up, still locked in, still listening. When the rain finally slowed, we opened the door again. It was late morning. The yard looked different, flattened in places, the grass pushed down in wide, rough patches. Around the cabin, the mud held marks. Not clear footprints, more like dents. But out toward the woods, we found them. Boot prints, deep ones, sizable. Heading back into the forest, away from the lake. The sheriff showed up around noon. 2 trucks, 3 men. We told them everything. They didn't laugh, but they didn't act surprised either. One of them walked the perimeter with Tyler. Another checked the trees for any sign of who it was. "Might have been a poacher," one of them said. "They get caught in storms, look for a dry spot. Nothing unusual." I didn't say anything, just kept staring at the woods. We packed up fast after that. No one said much. Threw everything in the back of the car, left the firewood, left the beer, left Tyler's granddad's rifle on the mantel. We hit the road and didn't stop until we saw the signal bars return to our phones. In town, we tried to act like it was just a weird night. Tyler cracked a joke about camping with bonus live theater. Mark called the intruder a ghost hiker. But no one laughed too hard. Because every time I think of it, of that window, of the light catching that soaked, featureless face, my throat closes up. I still hear the thunder sometimes, and find myself looking toward the corner of the room, half expecting to see someone dragging themselves forward through the shadows. Now I know. Storms don't always come alone. It happened after a long corporate dinner one winter evening. I'd stayed too late, made small talk for too long, drank too little to feel warm, but just enough to feel off. The road home felt endless. My car heater barely worked, and the icy asphalt reflected the headlights in sharp white flashes. I was maybe 30 minutes outside the city limits, just beyond the industrial park, when I saw him. He stood on the side of the road, no hat, thin jacket zipped up to his neck, arms wrapped around himself. He was maybe 19, 20 at most. His ears were red from the cold, and he was hopping slightly from foot to foot. I slowed down without really thinking about it. My stomach tightened a little. Not fear, just discomfort. He raised one hand in a calm, casual wave. His face was young, soft-featured, almost like a teenager's. He leaned slightly toward the road, eyes squinting into my lights. I rolled the window down a bit, not all the way. He stepped closer. "Can you give me a lift to the city?" he asked. His voice was calm, a little hoarse. He didn't say please. He didn't seem worried, just cold. I hesitated maybe 3 seconds. It felt wrong to leave him out there. It was below freezing and pitch dark behind him. "Hop in," I said. The door clicked open, and he slid in quickly. A blast of freezing air followed him, creeping into the cabin like a warning. He didn't shiver. He just reached over to pull the door closed slowly, then settled back into the seat. No backpack, no gloves. His fingers were red and raw. We drove in silence for a minute. I adjusted the vents toward him. He nodded slightly. "Name's Kirill," he said. "Max," I replied. He nodded again, then looked at me sideways. "You live in the city?" "Yeah," I said. "Which part?" The question felt sharp, too direct. I didn't like the way he asked. Not small talk, more like he was testing me. I picked a district I didn't live in, on the other side of the city. One I'd passed through a few times but barely knew. "North End," I said, "near the old cinema." His face stayed still for a second, then broke into a small smile. "Right on. That's exactly where I'm going. Saves me a lot of trouble." The road ahead was empty. The snow had stopped, but the ice remained. A few cars passed us going the other way, their lights briefly illuminating his face. He looked calm, relaxed even, but his hands stayed tucked deep into his pockets. I turned the radio down. A soft voice was reading traffic updates. Nothing important. Congestion in the center. An accident near the river bridge. Nothing about where we were. I adjusted my grip on the wheel. He leaned back, staring out the window. Then he asked, "You live alone?" I didn't answer right away. "Sort of," I said. "Roommate's out of town." He nodded again. "Nice. Quiet." He shifted a little in his seat. I heard the faint rustle of fabric as his hand moved again in his jacket pocket. Something stiff. Not keys. Not a phone. "You said the cinema?" he asked. "Yeah." He looked at me again. "You sure?" I kept my eyes on the road. "Yeah." "Why?" He shrugged. "Just sounds familiar. I think my cousin used to live nearby." Silence settled again. My hand drifted to the hazard button near the gear shift. Not consciously, just moved there. My fingers hovered over it. I wasn't going to press it, but something about having it close made me feel better. He turned toward me in his seat a little, like he was getting comfortable. He still hadn't taken his hands out of his pockets. I pulled up to the building I'd made up. It was a drab concrete block like hundreds of others in the city. Windows dark, no signs of life. A single stairwell light flickered near the entrance, casting a sickly glow on the icy steps. I stopped the car right by the curb and kept the engine running. He didn't move. He just sat there, scanning the small courtyard through the windshield, eyes drifting slowly from one side to the other. His gaze wasn't searching for something. It felt more like he was trying to remember a layout or check for movement. "That your entrance?" he asked. His hand reached toward the door handle, but he didn't open it. His fingers just rested there, light and ready. I nodded once, gripping the steering wheel tighter, fingers wrapping all the way around. Then, slowly, he pulled one hand out of his jacket pocket. It was a box cutter. Small, bright red plastic casing, silver blade half extended. He didn't flip it open all the way, just held it out like he was checking if the edge was still sharp. "Maybe you invite me in for some tea?" he said, voice low, soft like air escaping a tire. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just pressed the central lock button. The click of the doors locking echoed through the car like a firecracker. His eyes shifted to me, still calm, but watching, measuring. His other hand now joined the first on the handle and pulled. The door didn't budge. Metal clanked loudly. He yanked again, harder this time, his shoulder pressing into the door. I didn't wait. I slammed the gear into reverse, one arm flying behind the passenger seat as I twisted and hit the gas. The tires shrieked against the icy pavement. The car lurched back, and he was still gripping the handle from the outside, one foot already out the door. The door frame dragged his weight for a second before he lost his grip and stumbled. I saw him fall sideways, just missing the rear wheels as I shot backward down the narrow drive. I didn't brake. I didn't look for traffic. I spun the wheel and turned onto the next street, headlights bouncing across the concrete and bare trees. The buildings blurred past. A street lamp blinked out as I passed under it. His shape didn't follow, but I didn't slow down. I didn't stop again until I hit the highway. The city faded behind me, and the road ahead was wide, open, empty. I kept driving. 40 minutes later, I pulled into a brightly lit gas station. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The place was mostly empty, just one car at a pump, and a cashier visible inside the store wiping down the counter. I sat in the car for a few minutes, staring at the dark slash along the inside of my passenger door. A long white scratch carved deep into the plastic. It looked like something done in anger or boredom, or maybe both. I called the police, told them everything, gave them my name, the fake address I'd told the kid, the location where I picked him up. They asked if he took anything, if I was injured. I said no. Just a box cutter. Just a threat. Just a near miss. Without a real name or a real destination, they didn't promise much. "We'll take a report," the officer said. "But chances are, he's long gone." I stayed at the gas station until almost 4 a.m., bought a coffee I didn't drink, washed my hands in the restroom, looked at my reflection too long. Then I drove home. Snow was still falling when I parked. It covered the hood, the windows, softened the edge of the deep scratch on the door. I stood in the driveway for a while, watching it build up, covering everything quietly. Since that night, I don't stop for anyone. Not at night. Not in winter. Not ever. You never know which question will be the first, and which one will be the last. It was around 2 a.m. on a Wednesday in late October, one of those shifts where your brain just runs on caffeine and routine. I worked nights at a roadside diner just off the highway. Most nights were quiet. I'd clean, refill the coffee pots, and occasionally serve a lonely traveler or a bored trucker. There was always some old pop song playing low on the radio, and the buzz of the soda machine filled in the rest of the silence. You get used to the rhythm. Nothing happens, and then something small breaks the silence, like the ring of the doorbell when someone walks in. That night, I was behind the counter restocking the sugar packets when I heard the chime. I looked up and saw a man step inside. He ducked a little as he came through the door. He was that tall. His shoulders almost brushed both sides of the frame. He was wearing a gray zip-up jacket, stained with grease or oil, couldn't tell which. He didn't smile, just looked at me with this heavy stare, like he was sizing me up. "Hot dog," he said after a second, voice low. Calm. I nodded, grabbed a bun, and threw the sausage on the grill. I didn't ask about toppings, didn't want to keep the interaction going longer than it had to. He just stood there watching. I felt his eyes even when I turned around to grab napkins. No movement, no fidgeting, just still. "Anything to drink?" I asked, already guessing he'd say no. He shook his head slowly. I rang him up, $2.75. He handed me a $5. His fingers brushed mine when I gave the change back. Cold. Not like outside cold, more like freezer cold. The kind of cold that sticks. He took the hot dog, nodded once, and stepped back toward the corner table by the window. I noticed then, no truck outside. Just the old sedan parked near the edge of the lot, lights off. Not what I expected. Most truckers leave the engine running. I went back to wiping the counter, then ducked into the back to check the coffee. We had a small monitor hooked to a camera above the main area. Just one, pointed at the register and the booths. I glanced at it like always. Empty. He was gone from the screen. I frowned. I hadn't heard the door chime again. I waited a beat, then stepped back out. He was standing right in front of the counter again. I startled a little but tried to play it off. "Everything okay?" I asked. He didn't answer. Just leaned forward slightly and set the half-eaten hot dog on the counter. His hand reached out. That was when I saw it. His fingers were aimed straight at my wrist, not the napkin or the counter or anything else. He grabbed my wrist. Tight. His skin felt like metal from the freezer, and for a second I just froze, confused. Then he yanked. I didn't even have time to scream. 1 second I was standing. The next my body slammed against the counter, and I flew over it. My back hit the tiled floor hard, knocking the breath out of me. My knee cracked against the side of the fryer. The hot dog ketchup bottle flew off the shelf as I fell, splattering the ceiling, the walls, and part of my uniform. Red drops everywhere, like it exploded. I barely registered it, because he was already on me. He climbed over the counter like it was nothing. One of his hands wrapped around my throat, tight enough I couldn't breathe right. The other went digging in his jacket pocket, fast but not panicked. He knew what he was doing. I kicked. My heels scraped across the tiles. I tried to use the side of the counter to push off, to get leverage, but he just pressed down harder. His grip was like a vice. The back of my head thudded against the floor again. The gurgle from the soda machine kept running behind us, but it felt louder now, echoing. The refrigerators hummed. There was no other sound. No help. No headlights. Nothing. Just the cold floor, his heavy breath, and me choking under his weight. I kept trying to push him off, my hands clawing at his arm. He didn't flinch. His other hand finally stopped digging, and he pulled something out. In the back room, Max was finishing the end-of-shift report. He was a student, maybe 20, working nights for extra money. The little screen mounted on the wall caught his eye. Just static at first, then the camera feed. He watched as I suddenly vanished from the frame. 1 second I was standing, the next, gone. Max hesitated for half a second. Then the door slammed open, and he burst out holding the metal tray we used for carrying cutlery and condiments. It was heavy, wide. He gripped it with both hands like a shield. His sneakers squeaked on the tile. "Let her go!" he shouted, his voice cracking but loud. The man turned his head sharply. His eyes narrowed, locked onto Max, calculating. His hand let go of my neck, and in one fast motion, he shoved me sideways. My shoulder hit the mop bucket, water splashing up my arm. The man didn't run. He moved quickly but steady, like he knew the layout already. He climbed over the counter and went straight for the door. Max lunged forward, but he was too late. The door flew open. Cold night air rushed in. The bell above the frame jingled. A weak, empty sound. By the time Max reached the entrance, the man was gone. Max helped me sit up. My arms were shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't feel my fingers right. He grabbed a clean towel and pressed it gently against my neck. There was a mark, red and raw, already forming. We locked the door right after. Deadbolt, chain, even dragged one of the stools in front just to be sure. Max dialed the police while I stood next to him, still catching my breath. A patrol car arrived in under 10 minutes. 2 officers, one took our statements, the other checked the parking lot. I kept looking out through the glass, but the lot was empty. The sedan was gone. No headlights, no taillights, no tire marks. The officers circled back and told us the bad news. The security cameras outside had been down since the thunderstorm the night before. Power surge had knocked out half the building's external systems. No footage, nothing to track. One of them pointed out a faint smell near the edge of the lot. Diesel, lingering in the cold air. Could have peeled out seconds before we got here, he said. We stood out there with them under the flickering light for a while, just breathing in that heavy smell, not saying much. The next day, the owner came in early. He didn't say much either, just looked over the scene, quietly walked around the counter, checked the floor. He nodded once, then told us things would change. He had a second camera system installed by the weekend. Higher angles, wider lenses, new wiring. He also changed the policy. After midnight, 2 people had to be on shift in the front at all times. No solo cleanup, no breaks in the back without rotation. The police took our statements again, but the investigation went nowhere. No plates, no facial recognition from the indoor cam. No prints, no DNA. The man had touched everything like he didn't care, but somehow left no trace. The case just sat there. Weeks passed, then months. The red marks faded from my neck after a couple of days, but a line on my wrist stayed longer, dark and faint like an old burn. I stopped noticing it most days, unless the light caught it at a certain angle. Even now, sometimes, I feel the echo of pressure. His fingers, not squeezing, just there, like they remembered where they had been. Sometimes during a shift, I look at the front glass. It's thick, reinforced a few years ago after someone tried to break in for the register. Still, it's glass. I watch the parking lot, especially around 2 a.m., when the world gets too quiet. When the highway hums low in the distance and headlights stretch long across the wet asphalt. I think about how thin the line is between standing behind the counter and lying on the floor with someone's hand on your throat. Glass won't stop a person who already knows how easy it is to reach across and take. When Rachel was 10, she started picking daisies on her way to school. Every morning, no matter if it was sunny or the sky was covered in thick gray clouds, she'd pause by the same patch of grass near the old bus stop, crouch down, and gather a small bundle. She'd wrap them with a hair tie or a rubber band she found at home. Her teacher praised her for her kindness, even mentioned her during the parent-teacher meeting. I felt proud. It seemed innocent and sweet, and she always looked happy walking into the school gates, holding those flowers like they were something precious. One day she came home and mentioned a new friend, not a classmate, but the janitor, Mr. Green. He was older, maybe in his 60s, always wore a faded cap and a jacket with too many pockets. I'd seen him once or twice from the car when I waited near the school in the afternoons. He didn't talk much to anyone, but he'd wave to Rachel every day. She told me he liked flowers too. She said he was collecting bouquets in old jars behind the storage building. He let her add hers to the shelf and even labeled one with her name. I smiled and said that was sweet of him. It felt good knowing Rachel could brighten someone's day like that. The school seemed like a safe place. Fences high, guards by the doors, parents dropping kids off and picking them up at fixed hours. Mr. Green just blended into the background of all that. Other kids ran past him without even looking, but Rachel always waved. I didn't think much of it. I was used to her being friendly. She once gave her lunch to a classmate who forgot theirs. That's just who she was. Sometimes I saw him at pickup, standing near the dumpsters, smoking. He didn't approach the kids, just stood there watching them filter out in groups. When Rachel came out and spotted him, she waved. He smiled and gave a small nod. It looked harmless. A quiet man with a job most ignored, showing a little kindness to a cheerful girl. I didn't feel any reason to be suspicious then. I never saw him try to talk to any other kids. Around March, I noticed Rachel wasn't coming out right after the bell. 5 minutes, then 10. I'd sit in the car, engine off, watching the stream of children grow thin. Then she'd appear, walking fast, a bit flustered, saying she was helping Mr. Green in the art room. She'd mention arranging the vases or wiping the windows near the plants. I thought it was odd, but not in a worrying way. She liked being helpful, and she liked flowers. I told myself it was a nice way to learn responsibility. One afternoon, I asked more directly what she was doing. She said she was helping him set up vases around the school. She said he wanted every classroom to have flowers, and he needed someone with a good eye. I laughed a little and said she had a very good eye. She smiled and leaned back in her seat. It seemed fine. I didn't want to be the kind of parent who questioned every small thing. In April, 2 of Rachel's classmates, twins named Mia and Tara, approached me during pickup. I'd seen them around, giggling and always moving fast like sparrows. That day, they stood by my car door, and Mia leaned in slightly. She said, "We saw Mr. Green writing stuff in a notebook. He was looking at Rachel's schedule on the bulletin board." Tara nodded quickly beside her, eyes wide. I asked what they meant, and they said they were just passing by and saw him writing down times. I didn't say much in the moment, just thanked them and waved goodbye. Back at home, I felt uneasy. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the thought stuck in my head. I called the school the next morning and asked to speak with the principal. I told her what I heard. She paused, then said, "Mr. Green is just very thorough. He keeps notes to stay organized. He's been with the school for over 10 years. Her voice sounded calm, rehearsed even. She said there hadn't been any complaints before. I thanked her and hung up, but I didn't feel reassured. That evening, I asked Rachel more carefully about her time with Mr. Green. I didn't want to scare her or sound accusing. I just said, "What do you two usually do after school?" She hesitated. Not long, just a blink too long. Then she said, "Just help with vases, that's all." I asked if he ever gave her anything. She looked down and said, "Just lets me pick the best flowers." Her voice was even, but her fingers twisted the hem of her shirt. I asked if he ever said anything weird. She shook her head. "No. He's just nice. He said I remind him of his niece." I watched her closely. There wasn't fear in her eyes, just a kind of nervous effort, like she wanted to say the right thing. I didn't want to press harder, so I nodded and let the conversation drop. I told myself not to overreact. Not every quiet man is dangerous. Not every odd moment is a warning sign. I let it go. I wanted to trust her. She was a smart girl. I thought if something was really wrong, she would tell me. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday when Rachel didn't come out to the school gates on time. The parents around me were gathering their kids, umbrellas opening, hurrying into their cars. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. By 15, the crowd had thinned and the teachers by the front entrance were heading back inside. I got out of the car and went in. The receptionist looked up, confused when I asked if Rachel was still inside. She called the classroom, then another. A few minutes passed and someone paged the vice principal. That's when the tension started. People began moving faster, voices rising. 2 boys from Rachel's class burst into the office, both of them soaking wet, out of breath. One of them shouted, "She's in the janitor's closet! He locked her in!" The vice principal ran. I followed. The hallway felt longer than usual, the sound of our steps echoing too loudly. When we reached the door near the utility wing, it was shut. The lights in that hall were dim, one flickering above. The vice principal knocked once, then forced the handle. Locked. From the inside. He banged again, shouting Rachel's name. There was a muffled sound. A cry. He fumbled for his keys, shoved one in, turned, and pushed the door open. Inside it was dark, barely any light. Rachel stood in the corner, tears on her face, arms wrapped around herself. Mr. Green was standing too close. He had a box of wires and light bulbs on a cart. "I was just showing her the collection," he said, calm. His voice low, like nothing was wrong. She got curious. I didn't think the door would lock. The switch for the light was near him, but it was off. I pushed past the vice principal and pulled Rachel out. She clung to me, her hands shaking. I didn't say anything to Mr. Green. I couldn't. The vice principal stayed behind with him. I left the building carrying my daughter, rain soaking both of us. The police showed up about 30 minutes later. An officer took my statement while another sat with Rachel. She didn't say much, just that he'd said he had something special to show her. He told her to step in. Then the door shut. Then it was dark. He didn't touch her, she said. Just stood there. Talked about jars, about labels, about saving beauty. They questioned him for over an hour. He repeated that kids had been messing around in the supply closet lately, and he was trying to keep them out. He claimed Rachel had wandered in, and he'd followed her to stop her from tripping on tools. Said the door closed behind him, that he didn't know it had locked. No cameras in that hallway. No proof either way. His record was clean. There was nothing solid to hold him on. The school, of course, fired him the next day. They made a statement to parents. They talked about safety and community trust. A letter went out promising policy reviews and additional training. But I could see it in their eyes. They weren't worried about Rachel. They were worried about headlines. We went to court, but it wasn't a criminal trial. Just a hearing about his conduct, about workplace rules. The school district wanted it over quickly. The judge ruled that he had violated student contact policies. Nothing more. No prison. Just barred from working near children again. I sat in that courtroom, holding Rachel's hand while he sat across the room, hands folded, silent. He didn't look at us once. The whole thing faded from the public eye in a week. Another school had a minor fire. That took the attention. No one wanted to talk about the quiet man with the flowers anymore. But for us, it didn't fade. I couldn't forget how small she looked in that dark room. How easily she could have disappeared if those boys hadn't spoken up. Now there's a panic button installed beside every staff room and storage door in the school. They added glass panels to every door that didn't have one. They changed dismissal procedures. More cameras, more locks. None of it feels like enough. Rachel doesn't pick flowers anymore. She doesn't even look at them when we pass the old patch near the bus stop. She walks a little faster these days, keeps her eyes forward. She's in a self-defense class now, the youngest in the group. I offered it, and she said yes right away. No hesitation. She doesn't talk about Mr. Green. She doesn't need to. The silence says everything. A sheet of paper can't stop a hand. A rule book doesn't guard a hallway. That's what I learned. No policy, no speech, no gentle nod from a principal will keep a child safe unless you watch. Unless you listen. I used to think kindness was always a good thing. That letting your child be warm and open made the world better. But small hands shouldn't open locked doors. Not alone. It was that September Friday night when my boyfriend and I were celebrating my promotion. Nothing fancy, just a couple drinks after work, some laughter, a small buzz. Buses were running slow, like they always do late evening, so we decided to walk home. The weather was warm, not too windy, and the city was still buzzing around us. Cars passed, people were sitting outside small cafes, the occasional music from an open window drifted out. We walked side by side, still joking about the weird way my boss had handed me the promotion letter, like he didn't want to admit I deserved it. I was scrolling through my phone trying to find a decent place nearby still selling shawarma. He kept saying I was too picky, and I told him he just wanted to go to the sketchy kiosk near his old dorm. At the intersection near 3rd and Koltsevaya, we had to stop for a red light. That's when I noticed him. A man, maybe 40, standing completely still in front of a closed pharmacy. He wasn't just glancing at us like people do. He was watching, full-on staring, like he was waiting for something to happen. His hands were in the pockets of a brown jacket, shoulders hunched. His face didn't move, but his eyes followed every one of our steps. I turned my head away, tried not to make it a big deal. Still, my hand tightened slightly around my boyfriend's. He hadn't seen the guy yet, was still half laughing about how we always end up arguing over food. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to spook us for nothing. Maybe the guy was just tired. Maybe he was waiting for a ride. But I walked a bit faster, trying to look like I wasn't. I kept my smile on like everything was normal. It was easier that way. He started to talk about taking a shortcut through the park. I said no without explaining why. We stuck to the street, brighter, busier. About half a block past the intersection, I turned my head slightly and saw the man again. He was walking now, maybe 50 meters behind us. Not fast, not running, just walking like he had somewhere to go. And that somewhere was in the same direction as us. My boyfriend glanced back casually and didn't say anything, but he started holding my hand a little tighter. We crossed the street to the other side. There weren't many people on the stretch. A couple passing by us in the opposite direction. A delivery guy unloading crates near a bar. Still felt safe enough, just not busy. The man crossed after us. No hesitation. He wasn't hiding it anymore. We turned right onto a quieter street lined with old apartment buildings and shuttered shops. It was darker, with only every third street lamp working. I could hear our footsteps echo on the pavement. Then, layered over ours, heavier, faster steps started closing the distance behind us. I didn't have to look to know it was him. My boyfriend heard it too. His grip tensed, and he muttered, "He's probably just heading home." But his voice wasn't sure. His pace picked up, and so did mine. I didn't want to run. Not yet. We passed a kebab place just locking up. The guy behind the counter gave us a glance as he turned the key in the gate. I almost said something, but the moment passed, and we kept walking. We were coming up on the next corner when I looked into the reflection of a glass storefront. In the dark pane, our shadows stretched long and clear. 3 of them. Mine, my boyfriend's, and his. He was close enough now that I could see the details of his clothes. The brown jacket, scuffed boots, no bag, just walking steadily toward us. He hadn't tried to stop a single one of the 3 empty taxis that rolled by. He had no phone out, no headphones, just eyes locked forward. I wanted to run, but I was wearing cheap heels, and the sidewalk had loose stones everywhere. I could feel the rubber slipping with each step. Heels that had been fine for a calm night out were now turning into a liability. My boyfriend glanced back again. I didn't. I just kept moving forward, counting the street numbers, trying to remember which one had the 24-hour grocery store. We needed people, light, a place to duck into. We took the corner faster than we should have. My heel caught the edge of a crack and slid. I stumbled, nearly fell, but caught myself. He didn't say anything. He just pulled my arm and kept us moving. The footsteps behind us didn't slow. They grew louder, closer. Ahead of us was a courtyard framed by one of those old Stalin-era arches, tall, stone, and narrow, with a rusty metal gate that led into the backyard of a massive apartment block. My boyfriend suddenly tugged me toward it. "The gate locks from the inside," he said, voice low but urgent. We cut off the sidewalk and ran beneath the arch. Our footsteps echoed off the walls as we passed through the tunnel and into the dim yard. The gate creaked as he shoved it shut behind us. The lock was just a metal hook latch, simple but enough. He slid it in place and stepped back just as the man reached the gate. There was no pause, no confusion. The guy slammed both palms against the metal bars and let out a sharp string of curses. His face was closer now than ever, lit briefly by the glow of a passing car. Pale skin, thinning hair glinting with sweat, jaw clenched so hard the muscles twitched. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. Just breathed heavy like he'd been chasing us longer than a few blocks. My boyfriend stood in front of me, keeping a small space between us and the gate, but we both held onto each other's hands. We couldn't look away. The man stared at us through the bars, chest rising and falling. Then he stopped moving altogether, just watching. I could hear my own breath now, sharp in the stillness of the yard. Even the city noise had faded behind us. It felt like we were sealed in with the air sucked out. Then, without a word, he stepped back once, turned, and walked away into the side alley. We stayed behind the gate for a long time, even after he was gone. Neither of us spoke. I counted slowly to 30, then again. My knees felt weak, but I forced myself to stay standing. My boyfriend kept looking left and right, as if expecting him to reappear from another angle. We stayed like that, frozen in place, until our breathing finally slowed and the adrenaline settled just enough to let us think again. He pulled out his phone and called the police. His voice was calm, explaining what happened, giving the street name and a description. They said a patrol would come by. We waited in the yard until 2 officers showed up, one older guy and one younger. They walked the nearby alleys with flashlights, but there was nothing to find. No sign of him. The officers said this part of the city had too many dead ends and crisscrossing paths. Easy to disappear if you knew where to go. They told us to be careful and to try not to walk home so late. That was it. We didn't argue. We didn't even say much to each other after they left. Just walked the rest of the way home in silence. Street by street, building by building. Every few meters I looked over my shoulder. The sound of our own footsteps felt louder now. Every parked car, every shadow between streetlights looked like a place someone could be waiting. My boyfriend kept close, eyes scanning. We didn't take the shortcut. We didn't laugh anymore. My heels were scuffed, and I didn't notice until we got to our building that my ankle was sore from when I slipped. I didn't care. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling the news while waiting for my bus. One headline made me stop. Assault near Central District courtyards. Woman escapes with injuries. It was the same area, same time of night, same type of street. Narrow, dark, too many places to hide. The photo was taken a few hours after. Just police tape and one of those sandwich board signs that says crime scene. They hadn't caught anyone. The description of the suspect was vague, just enough to make my stomach twist. The woman survived. That's what the article said. She screamed early enough to scare him off, but not before he got his hands on her. She had bruises, some broken ribs. No arrests. The police were asking for witnesses. That day, I went to a store near my work and bought a pepper spray. I didn't even wait. I took it out of the package and clipped it inside my bag where I could reach it without looking. Then I searched for self-defense classes and signed up for kickboxing. Twice a week, after work. I stopped wearing heels on the way home. Sneakers only, even if I changed into dress shoes at the office. Now, whenever we go out for drinks, I never walk home without checking the streets. I don't look up at the stars anymore. I look at corners, windows, parked vans. I cross the street if I feel something off. I trust the feeling now. It doesn't mean I'm scared all the time. Just not stupid. People say if you laugh loud enough, the city can't get to you. That if you keep walking with confidence, nothing will happen. But the street doesn't care how happy you are. It doesn't care that it was a celebration. If you forget to watch the shadows, they'll watch you instead. And they don't blink. I was 3 when my parents rented a house outside the city. It wasn't anything fancy, just a one-story place with creaky floors and a big backyard. The kind of place families go when they want quiet weekends and less traffic. I remember it mostly in pieces. The plastic swing set out back, the way the bathroom tiles were always cold, and the basement, coldest place of all. The basement had a narrow wooden door that scraped the floor when you opened it. You had to pull hard. The stairs were steep and made of concrete, with metal handrails screwed into the wall. It smelled like wet cement, mildew, and something weirdly sweet, like old soap. My dad stored things down there. Moving boxes, garden tools, cleaning supplies. My mom almost never went in. She hated the damp. I liked to hide down there, usually when we were playing hide and seek or when I just wanted to be alone. There was a corner with a lot of boxes stacked up. Books, photo albums, seasonal decorations. I'd crawl behind them and sit there for what felt like forever, just listening to the water heater click or the pipes hum. It felt quiet, safe. That's where the figure stood. It was tall, taller than my dad, and slim, shaped almost like a person. It didn't have a face, just a smooth, round head and long arms that hung stiffly at its sides. It was wrapped in a tight gray cloth, like a covering over foam or plastic. The fabric was stretched tight across the shape, like it had been made to fit exactly. It didn't move, ever, and I never saw anyone touch it. I assumed it was some kind of storage dummy, something adults used for coats or maybe even Halloween decorations. I wasn't scared of it. Sometimes I talked to it when I was playing. Once, I brought down one of my old dolls and set it at its feet. I told it, "So you're not bored when I'm gone." I don't know why I thought it would be bored. It just seemed right to share something with it. The lighting down there was always dim. A single bulb hanging from a wire lit the whole room, and when it swung, shadows would shift on the walls. I remember once I thought its head turned just a little, but it didn't. I got closer and waved my hand in front of its face. Nothing. Still, sometimes I felt like it watched me. Not in a scary way, more like how a pet watches you move around a room. We lived there for about 4 years. Nothing ever happened with the figure. My parents never mentioned it, and I never asked. I just figured it was one of those adult things I wasn't supposed to mess with, like the big metal ladder in the garage or the sharp tools locked in the shed. I didn't give it much thought. When I turned 7, we moved closer to town. My dad got a new job, and they wanted me to start school somewhere more convenient. We packed everything over a few weekends, loading boxes into the car and driving them to the new house. The basement was the last thing we cleared out. I remember standing at the top of the stairs, watching my dad carry out the last of the boxes, and thinking it looked empty. I didn't remember seeing the figure that day, but I didn't think about it much. A few days after the move, I was helping my mom unpack in the kitchen. She handed me some utensils, and I asked her, "Where did you put the mannequin?" I didn't even think the question was strange. I just assumed she'd say it was in storage or left behind. She looked at me, confused. "What mannequin?" "The one in the basement, the tall one in the corner," I said. She paused, then shook her head slowly. "Honey, there wasn't any mannequin down there. We only stored boxes and your dad's old bike. That's all." I remember stopping what I was doing and just staring at her. No, it was in the corner, the one wrapped in gray. I used to play next to it. She looked serious then. "Sweetie, I don't know what you saw, but we never had anything like that in the house. I promise." I didn't argue. I just nodded and kept helping her unpack. But that night, I thought about it for a long time. The gray cloth, the shape, the way I used to talk to it like it was listening. I remembered the way its arms hung, and how it always stood in the exact same position, like it had been waiting for something. A few days later, I brought it up again. I told my mom I was sure I'd seen it. I even described it, how tall it was, how its head looked, how I left my doll at its feet. She got quiet and said, "There really wasn't anything like that down there. I swear." She even laughed a little, like she thought it was just something my brain had made up. I stopped asking after that. Something about the way she insisted made me uneasy. She didn't sound like she was hiding something. She sounded genuinely confused, like the thing I remembered had never been there at all. After that, I avoided basements completely. At friends' houses, I wouldn't even go near the doors, even in daylight. I told myself it was just leftover nerves from being little. Kids imagine things. Maybe I saw a coat rack or something covered in a sheet and made it into something else. But the image of it, the gray, tightly wrapped shape, never left my head. I could still see it, clear as anything, even years later. When I was 25, I happened to be driving through that same suburb. I hadn't planned it. Just took a different exit on my way back from a client meeting, thinking I'd avoid traffic. But then I recognized the street. The trees looked taller, and the sidewalks were cracked now, but the curve in the road was the same. I slowed down as I passed the old house. It was smaller than I remembered. The paint had faded, the lawn was yellow, and a red and white "for sale" sign stood crooked in the grass. I parked across the street and just sat there for a while, staring. Part of me thought it was stupid. What was I doing here after so long? But then another part whispered that maybe it would feel like closure. A loop tied off. I opened my phone and looked up the listing. The agent's number was right there. I called. The next day, I showed up for the tour. I didn't say I used to live there. Just said I was considering a move. The agent, a middle-aged guy with a clipboard, smiled and unlocked the front door, talking about square footage and property taxes. I nodded along, not listening. The inside smelled like dust and lemon-scented cleaner. The furniture was staged. Fake books, fake plants. I walked through the kitchen, touched the chipped tile on the counter, stepped into the hallway where I used to run barefoot. Finally, I asked, "Can I see the basement?" The agent looked surprised but led me to the door. He turned the knob and flicked on the switch. The same yellow bulb flickered to life. The stairs creaked like I remembered. I went down alone. It still smelled like mold and soap. The air was thick and damp, just like before. Nothing had changed except maybe the boxes were gone, and the concrete looked more cracked. I turned toward the corner automatically. Empty. There was nothing there. Just cobwebs and a faint stain on the floor, like something heavy had once stood there a long time. I stood still for a minute. I don't know what I expected. Maybe part of me hoped it would still be there. Maybe another part had always feared it. I felt both relieved and weirdly disappointed, like I'd lost something. I walked slowly around the basement. The walls were just walls. The pipe overhead hissed as the heater kicked on. But still, the silence pressed in hard, like the house hadn't forgotten, like it was waiting for something. Upstairs, I found the agent by the front door. He was checking something on his tablet. "I used to live here," I said. He raised his eyebrows. "Really? Small world. I was a kid. Long time ago." He nodded. "Lots of families came through. Place has been a rental for years. Last guy had it for almost a decade." I hesitated. "Anyone ever mention mannequins?" He laughed. "Actually, yeah. Weird thing. The guy before last, retired restorer or something, kept a bunch of antique mannequins in the basement. Said he was working on restoring them for a museum or collector. Not sure how legit that was." I stared at him. He went on. "Left most of them when he moved out. Didn't say much, but the agent before me told me one of them went missing. Vanished during the move. Nobody ever found it. Weird, right?" Something cold passed through me. "Do you know when that was?" I asked. 10, maybe 11 years ago, he said. "Long time." I did the math. We left that house almost exactly 11 years ago. I didn't say anything else. Just nodded and finished the tour. I thanked him, shook his hand, and left. I didn't buy the house. I never went back. I didn't try to trace the mannequin or find out where it went. I could have asked questions, followed up with whoever packed that basement, checked if any neighbors had seen anything. I didn't. But since then, whenever I hear kids heading toward a basement, mine, friends, anyone's, I follow. I make up excuses. Say I need to check the laundry or grab something. I don't tell them why. Maybe it's all just a weird coincidence. A child's imagination grafted onto something harmless. Maybe. But I've never shaken the feeling that kids sometimes notice things adults don't. Or maybe we do notice, but we decide not to look too closely. Not to ask. Every time I open the basement door and flip the light switch, I see that memory. The shape. Still. Wrapped in gray. Watching. It was during the football finals, and we were drowning in orders. Everyone was either watching the game or working overtime because of it. I had just picked up a double delivery, 2 pepperoni pizzas, and a bottle of Coke. The address was in a residential complex near the city edge. Nothing unusual, just another late-night run. I was kind of glad to get out of the main streets. Traffic had been hell for hours. When I reached the complex, it was already past 10. The place looked halfway decent. Rows of old 5-story buildings, one of those cookie-cutter Soviet-style setups. The map led me to a building near the back. The entrance was lit, but the lamp over it was flickering like in a cheap horror film. Not enough to bother me, just annoying. I parked the moped a few feet from the stairs and balanced the pizzas in one hand while checking the name on the intercom. Before I even rang, a guy stepped out from the shadows next to the entrance. Looked about 17. Skinny black hoodie, hands in his pockets. He raised one hand and waved casually. "Here," he said. I stepped off the moped, but my foot slipped on something wet on the first step. Maybe soda or oil. I didn't fall, just kind of jolted and caught myself with my free hand. The kid was already walking toward me, now digging into his pocket. I held up the box. 2 pizzas and a Coke, 940 rubles. He pulled out a wad of bills, thick enough to be more than necessary. As I reached to take it, I noticed the edge of a 5,000 note on top. He didn't hand it over. He just stood there, flipping through the cash slowly, like he was deciding what to give me. "Price changed since the call," I said. "You added the Coke late, so it went up." He looked up then, smiling, not like someone who thought it was funny. More like he was waiting for something. His face didn't show much, but his eyes were sharp, like a cat that knows it already caught the mouse. He kept smiling, not blinking. Then I felt it. Metal, cold and hard, pressing straight into the middle of my back. Money and keys. Fast. The voice was lower, older. Closer. It wasn't the kid in front of me. Another one had come up behind while I was distracted. The barrel of the pistol dug into the fabric of my shirt. I could feel every inch of it, down to the slight tremble of the guy holding it. My fingers froze. I didn't turn around. The teenager in front of me was still holding the cash, still smiling. Like he'd rehearsed the whole thing. Before I could move, a third one came from the side. He didn't say a word. Just lunged forward, grabbed the insulated pizza bag off my shoulder, yanked it hard, and took off running toward the back of the building. I didn't even see his face. Just a black hoodie and sneakers flashing under the dim light as he disappeared into the yard behind the complex. I slowly reached down and unzipped the pouch where we kept the daily cash. Notes, receipts, coins. All of it. I pulled it out and held it up. My hands were shaking a bit. Not much, but enough to fumble with the strap. The guy behind snatched it out of my grip. My heart was pounding now, loud in my ears. I could still see my moped just a few steps away. It was running, keys in the ignition, light on. I thought about making a break for it, but I couldn't move. My legs felt like they weren't getting the signal. I was just stuck there, holding the empty pizza boxes and that stupid bottle of Coke. They didn't run immediately. They laughed. Not loud, just short, sharp bursts. The kind of laugh that doesn't come from joy, more like showing off. Like this was a joke between them, a game. Then they were gone, slipped into the shadows of the courtyard, shoes barely making noise on the cracked pavement. I called 911 with my fingers barely holding steady on the screen. My voice shook as I gave the address, trying not to drop the phone. The operator kept asking me to repeat, and I had to focus on speaking clearly, even though my mouth felt dry and my ears still rang from the sudden shock. The patrol car came fast, maybe 10 minutes, lights flashing across the empty lot. The officers asked me to stay by the moped while they checked the entrance and then did a quick sweep of the area. They didn't expect to find anyone still hanging around, and they were right. The courtyard was quiet. No movement. No sound. Like it had swallowed everything. We drove around the surrounding blocks together, just in case, me in the back of the patrol car answering questions while one officer scanned the sidewalks. 20, maybe 30 minutes later, a call came over the radio. Another unit had stopped a silver sedan for speeding, about 3 kilometers away, heading toward the main road out of town. We rerouted and met them at a gas station where they had the car pulled over. The driver, an older teen, was leaning against the trunk in handcuffs, looking more annoyed than scared. The other doors were open. Inside the trunk, under some crumpled jackets and a blanket, were stacks of smartphone boxes, like from a warehouse, and next to them, my delivery bag. They popped it open. My receipt book was still there. Crumpled rubles in the side pocket. The pizzas were gone, of course. The kid behind the wheel matched the description I gave. Same frame, same black hoodie with a red logo on the sleeve. The other two had run. They jumped out right after the car got pulled over, sprinted into the alley. Cops didn't catch them on foot, but they checked street cameras and got their faces clear on a corner store's outdoor cam. By morning, they had both names from school records. One was 15, the other 16. Both lived nearby. They got picked up before lunch the next day. At the station, they processed the driver first. He was 18, just over the line. During interrogation, he gave up everything. Said it started as a joke, a prank. They wanted to film something funny for a social media page, robbing a delivery guy to get views. It wasn't supposed to be serious. The gun was real, though. Said they found it in his uncle's old closet and thought it would look cooler. He smirked during the questioning, according to the officer. Didn't seem scared, kept saying it wasn't a big deal, that nobody got hurt. But the law didn't care. The court case moved quickly. For the minors, they got probation, sent home with ankle monitors and weekly check-ins. Their parents sat in the gallery, pale and shaking, barely looking at anyone. The one who drove, who planned it, got time in a correctional facility. Not years, but enough to wreck his path for a while. The judge said the use of a firearm changed everything. Said it stopped being a prank the second they pressed the gun against my spine. I sat outside the courtroom after giving my statement, still in my delivery jacket. They'd asked me to bring something to show for evidence, so I brought the same kind of pizza box from that night. I kept it with me while I waited, just because I didn't want to walk back to the car empty-handed. Inside was a fresh pie I'd picked up on the way, thinking maybe I'd eat after. But as I sat there in the hallway, the smell of the cheese made me sick. I couldn't open the box, couldn't look at it. I just sat there with it on my lap, trying not to breathe too deep. That box, that smell, it was all stuck in my head now. Since then, I changed how I do deliveries. I always ask for online payment, no matter how small the order is. If they can't pay online, I tell them to meet me under a lit entrance. I don't step out unless the light above the door is working. If it's flickering, I call them and wait until they come down. Some of the guys at the shop laugh at me, say I'm paranoid now, say I've gone soft, that it was just bad luck. But I remember the feeling, the exact weight of the barrel on my back, the shallow breath of the kid standing inches behind me. I remember how loud the football commentary was on someone's open window while I was being robbed. It made everything feel fake, like I was watching myself from outside. The pizzas cool down fast on a night like that. But fear, it stays hot for a long time. The first week of college felt like freedom without rules. After years of strict routines at home, I suddenly had no curfews, no check-ins, no one watching. I moved into a duplex just off campus, renting the ground floor with a girl I barely knew before move-in, a gamer who mostly stayed in her room with her headset on, yelling into her mic at night. We barely talked, but it worked. She had her space, I had mine. Our unit was small but comfortable, with beige carpet, 2 bedrooms, and a shared bathroom. The windows were old but opened wide, and at night the air smelled like grass and warm asphalt. The duplex shared a common front entrance with the upstairs tenants, 2 girls who I only met once during move-in. They seemed fine. One of them brought cookies. They were friendly, but not overly chatty. A week later, they ordered pizza one evening and forgot to lock the main door after the delivery guy left. It happened. The hallway between our units had that automatic door closer, but it didn't latch unless you gave it a firm pull. That night was hot. One of those humid September nights where the air sticks to your skin even with the fan on full blast. I left my bedroom window cracked open, screen still in place. I couldn't sleep, so I watched a dumb reality show on my laptop. I remember shifting it to my side when I got too tired to keep watching. I dozed off with the light from the screen still glowing, the lid halfway down. My phone was on the bed next to me. I didn't even plug it in. I had no reason to think twice about it. It felt safe here. Sometime in the middle of the night I woke up, not because of a sound exactly, but something felt off. My room was dim, just a bit of light coming through the window from the street lamp outside. My fan hummed steadily, but then I heard a quiet shuffle, like a sock dragging across carpet. Just one. Then again, closer. My eyes opened. At first, I thought maybe my roommate came in, maybe looking for something. But the figure in my room was wrong. Too tall, too still. It wasn't her. I couldn't see much, but I could tell someone was leaning over me. Not touching, but close enough that I could see the shape of their arms and head blocking some of the light. I froze. He reached down slowly, like he was trying not to wake me. He slid my laptop off the bed so carefully that the lid didn't even close all the way. Then he picked up my phone, not even looking at it, and placed both items neatly on the desk near the door. I felt my heartbeat jump, but my body didn't move. Not because I was too scared. It's like it couldn't. Like everything just shut down. He stood over me again. Then he started to lower himself toward the mattress. One knee touched the edge. I didn't think, I just said it. Loud enough to be heard, but steady. There's 5 guys who live here. They'll be back any minute. My voice didn't shake. It didn't sound like me, but it worked. He straightened up like a spring and stepped away from the bed in one smooth motion. He didn't look at me. He just turned toward the door, walking quickly but without panic. Right before he left, his hand shot out to the shelf near the light switch. He grabbed my small Bluetooth speaker, a cheap one, barely the size of a mug. It wasn't worth much. He didn't hesitate. The door clicked softly behind him, not slammed or even shut hard. Just a clean, practiced close. The room went still again, like nothing had happened. I lay there for maybe 5 seconds before moving. Then I sat up fast and hit the light switch. My legs didn't feel stable, but I stood. No one else in the room. I checked the closet. Empty. I opened my door and looked down the hall. My roommate's door was closed, light off. I didn't hear any movement. I knocked once, hard. "You okay?" I asked. She answered a second later, groggy, voice muffled. "Yeah." "Why?" I didn't say anything else. I locked my bedroom door and pushed a chair under the handle. Then I sat on the bed and looked at the empty spot on my desk where the speaker used to be. The cops came about 20 minutes later. I told them everything while still wrapped in a blanket, sitting at the kitchen table. My voice was low, but I stuck to the details. The front door wasn't forced. None of the windows were broken. Nothing else was stolen. Just the laptop, the phone, and that speaker. Though the laptop and phone were left behind. It didn't make sense. One officer walked around the outside of the house with a flashlight. Another checked the front door and the hallway connecting the units. He said the door might have been unlocked for longer than we realized. Maybe even since the pizza delivery earlier. Upstairs, we heard crying. One of the girls apologized to the officer over and over. She kept saying it was her fault, that she forgot to pull the door shut, that it sounded like it latched. but maybe it didn't. I said nothing to her. I just sat there, hands under the blanket, gripping it tight like it was armor. There were no fingerprints, no shoe prints on the carpet, no surveillance in the hallway. Campus police said they'd patrol the street more often, but there wasn't much they could do. They left around 4 a.m. My roommate stayed up with me until morning. We didn't talk much. She made coffee and sat at the table, tapping on her phone. The speaker never turned up. Not in Lost and Found, not pawned nearby. It was cheap, but I kept thinking about it. Why he took just that, and not the other stuff. The cop said sometimes it's about speed, not value. Something that fits in the hand, easy to carry. Maybe he'd done it before. We bought new locks the next day. Double-cylinder deadbolts, the kind that need a key from both sides. We got a door sensor that beeped every time the door opened or closed. It wasn't much, but it made the sound of someone coming in impossible to miss. Now I check the door every time, even if I'm just stepping outside to take out the trash or grab a package. I touch the knob, give it a tug, hear the click. I don't care if I look paranoid. That night drilled it into me. People don't need a crowbar to get in. They just need you to forget, once, that the only thing between them and you is a door. It happened in April, during exam season. My head was splitting from stress, and that night, I had a fight with my mom. It wasn't even anything serious. She told me to stop slamming drawers and accused me of snapping all day. I told her to stop hovering. It blew up fast. I shouted something I don't even remember now, then slammed the door on my way out. I just needed air. I didn't take my phone. Left it on the desk, still charging. My pepper spray was in my school bag, which was hanging by the door. I didn't think I'd need it. The streets were empty. Not just quiet. Empty. Wind was swirling small branches and wrappers around. The kind of wind that always makes the street feel colder than it is. I didn't bring a jacket, only a hoodie, and I instantly regretted that. I kept walking. No direction, just away from the house. Around the corner, by the old kindergarten, I slowed down. That place always gave off weird vibes after dark. The building was low and long, with peeling yellow paint and windows covered in dirty security mesh. A single street lamp stood nearby, flickering. It blinked erratically, almost like it was trying to signal me something. I kept my head down and pulled my sleeves over my hands. Then I saw him. A man crouched by the door of the kindergarten, messing with something in the lock. His movements were stiff, impatient. At first, I thought he was maybe a janitor or something, but it was the wrong time for that. No one should be entering a kindergarten at midnight. I slowed down automatically. He turned his head, like he sensed someone. His face caught the light from the lamp just as it flicked back on. Thin, sharp features, some kind of stubble, eyes that held too long on me. I stopped walking. Just one step, but it felt like I'd triggered something. "Hey, come here," he shouted. His voice split the silence. It wasn't angry or polite, just flat and loud, like an order. I didn't answer. I turned and started walking away. Not fast, just quick enough to not look scared. But I heard his footsteps, heavy, uneven, getting closer. I started running. I didn't scream. I didn't even think to. I just ran. My heart slammed against my ribs. Behind me, I could hear his breathing, short and sharp. I didn't turn around. I knew he was gaining. His boots hit the pavement with thick, steady thuds. I turned down the side alley behind the industrial block, past the bakery warehouse. There was a loading zone there I'd passed before. Rows of metal shipping containers, most of them locked, some partly open. The kind of place no one goes at night. I ducked in between two containers, slipped on some loose gravel but kept moving. The alley between them was narrow and dark. The overhead lights had been broken for months. I pressed myself against the cold metal wall, trying to breathe quieter. His steps slowed as he entered the area. He was close. Too close. I heard him mutter something low. Then silence. A white SUV roared into the lot behind me. Its headlights swept over the container walls, bouncing in jagged arcs. The engine was deep and throaty, not like a normal car. It growled like something hunting. The tires hissed over the gravel, slow at first, then accelerating. I slipped behind a concrete loading ramp, crouching low and pressing my back against the cold wall. I could hear the vehicle circling. It wasn't in a rush. It moved like it had time, like it knew I was nearby and was just waiting to flush me out. I pulled the folding knife from my pocket. Small, lightweight, with a red handle. Some guy had given it to me 2 years ago when I helped him collect dropped papers during a windstorm. I kept it clipped to the side of my bag ever since. That night, by some instinct I couldn't explain, I had shoved it into my hoodie before storming out. Now it sat in my sweaty palm, barely comforting. The blade clicked open with a soft snap. I stayed still, didn't breathe loud. Gravel crunched nearby. The headlights returned, scanning the area. The SUV didn't stop moving. Minutes passed, or at least they felt like minutes. I stayed pressed behind the ramp, gripping the knife, shifting my weight only when my leg began to go numb. The headlights cut across the lot again, slow and wide. I caught a glimpse of the driver through the side window, a figure leaning forward, scanning every shadow. The lights passed over the containers where I'd first entered, then moved on. A door slammed. Someone swore. Not loud, but sharp. A short burst of angry muttering. The sound of something thrown. Then silence. For a moment I thought he was coming on foot, but the engine fired up again. Louder this time. The SUV growled as it shifted gears and rolled out toward the street. I heard the tires catch the asphalt and fade away. I didn't move. Not yet. I waited. Counted to 60, slowly. 5 times. My knees burned from crouching. My hand ached from gripping the knife too tight. Gravel bit through the thin fabric of my shoes. The moon was out now, full and high, lighting the yard in a pale, cold shine. It made the metal containers glow slightly, as if the lot itself was waiting for something else to arrive. The wind picked up, brushing plastic wrappers across the ground. I stayed down. When I finally stood up, my legs shook. I made my way around the edge of the lot, staying close to the walls, ears tuned to every little noise. I didn't see him again. Didn't see the car. No footsteps behind me. No headlights. Still, I checked every alley twice before crossing. I didn't go the main way home. I took the longest route possible, sticking to fences and backyards, hiding behind parked vans when I heard engines. At home, the windows were dark. I slipped in through the side door. Quiet. Careful. Mom was asleep, door cracked open, TV screen flickering inside. I stood in the hallway for a second, listening. Everything was normal here. Peaceful. Like I hadn't just spent an hour hiding from something I still couldn't fully explain. I went to the kitchen and sat down at the table. I didn't turn on the lights. The knife sat in my palm, dull in the moonlight coming through the window. The edges of my hoodie were still damp with sweat. I stayed there until morning, just watching the light on the knife blade shift as the sky brightened. I didn't call the police, didn't tell my mom. What could I say? That I saw a guy breaking into a daycare and got chased? That a random SUV just happened to show up looking for someone in the same alley I was hiding in? Nothing sounded believable. And even if it was, what would they do? Patrol the lot once? Ask me to describe a face I barely saw? Instead, I sat there and made myself a promise. No more walking out for no reason. No more leaving the house without a plan. No more forgetting the small stuff. Phone, keys, knife. The world outside doesn't care if you're angry or if your mom pushed your buttons. It doesn't care that you're 16 and just needed a walk. Sometimes the worst kind of fear is the one you unlock yourself, slamming the door behind you, letting it out into the night without realizing what you've started.